Thank you very much, Phil. This was, by the way, my colleague Phil Langer, Professor for Social Psychology. I want to welcome you, everybody. Special welcome to President Olberts and Frau Ms. Daxa. I'm very glad that and feel very honored that you made your way on this sunny day at 9 a.m. in the morning to the conference. Thank you very much. And I'm very honored as well that I can have this opportunity to speak about the importance of humanistic transformation from a psychological perspective. And I want to start with some organizational comments. We take pictures here during the conference, and I hope you're all fine with it. If anyone is not fine with us taking pictures and publishing it maybe on website or anything like this, please let us know and give it. Maybe you can say this.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Can the microphone be turned up? You're barely audible.
Yes.
Hmm? Okay, better?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So anybody who does not want to take pictures, please go to the organization committee. Otherwise, I assume that everybody is fine with it. And another organizational comment for those who participate in this conference, the subsidies will be paid right after my presentation in the front entrance at Ms. Thesenwitz. So I told this, otherwise I would forget it. Our conference, I'm very proud, and I want to start my introduction as a first official speaker here as participant of the conference by introducing a bit our program and what we will expect here in the following 3 days. And as you will see in the program, the topics are very interrelated, so we do not have key topics, but I tried to organize it a bit to give you a brief overview what we are doing, because this is also an overview about what humanistic transformation as a broad term, and Rainer already gave an introduction into yesterday, our understanding is it about. So one point is about humanism, then we will approach social identities, we will approach the topic of social character, and of course transformation. And here you can see a bit which panels we will include. So regarding the issue of humanism, we reflect on foundations of Fromm humanism. We discuss the very important concept of biophilia, and we have 2 panels in the end of the conference, kind of a balance, reappraising Fromm's humanism as a humanistic investigation and as perspectives on the possible. Then regarding social identities, and this shows how political this issue is, which we have as well. We have 2 panels which face authoritarianism, one social identity fascism, and one understanding left-wing authoritarianism today through the work of Erich Fromm. And I think this is very important for the whole conference. It's not about worshipping a very important figure, but we want to have an importance, and we want to include ourselves, and I think this is especially important from psychological perspectives, into debates on the contemporary society and social change. And this is very well fits with the panel 12, social identity and transformation. One of the most important concepts of Erich Fromm is the social character, and we're very happy to have a lot of researchers who work with this concept. So we have panel 3, social character analysis. We will deal with the pathology of normalcy, and we will discuss social character transformation. And of course, in the conference on transformation, we will regard several issues and several focus areas of transformation. So political transformation, transformation in work and organization, transformation of society, and transformation in psychotherapy. And I think already this brief outline shows how rich, from my understanding and from Rainer's understanding, this conference is, and we really hope that we have inspiring discussions. And we're also very happy, and I want to show you this as I represent the IPU here, that a lot of colleagues from our staff from the IPU will also join the conference. Not everybody of them is a Fromm expert, but all of them are very interested in dialogue, in getting into touch with you and discussing with you. So we have like Professor Tilman Habermas, we have Phil, who's here already, we have Professor Konrad Schnabel, Professor Gavin Sullivan, and we have Sebastian Bobert, Ramona Franz, Benedikt Saalfeld, Nebgen, and Katrin Vogt, who are research assistants at these universities and will also chair. And you have if you have them as chair, you already see a picture of them, and so you can maybe approach them and talk to them. Today, that's the last organizational. Before I go more into the content-wise issue, I want to explain a bit what is in the program as panel discussion. This is a bit a different logic than the research panels we have. So we decided to have one open panel where we invite important persons from different social spheres and public spheres, and we have 4 persons, which I can briefly introduce to you and would advocate and advise you to go. I would be very happy if you come at 6 o'clock, I think it's in the program. So we have Thomas Brun, who, by the way, is also a student here in the Master for Leadership and Consultancy, which shows we have not only young students, but we have very excellent students who are leaders by themselves already. He is, for example, member of the Presidium of the German Society of Club of Rome. We have Gerd Hofian, who was yesterday here as one of the registered observers. He's an internationally experienced management expert. He works with companies to embed novel ways of thinking and acting into their corporate culture. We have Professor Gesine Schwan, who is the president of the Humboldt-Viadrina governance platform, chair of the SPD, which is a political party here in Germany, Fundamental Values Commission, who was a former president of the Viadrina University in Frankfurt-Oder, and who is a public figure as well, and was twice candidate for the office of federal president in Germany. And we have Harald Welzer, who recently has a lot of success with books and is a very public figure, a lot in talk shows, for example, so is one of the public sociologists, let's say, of Germany. He's co-founder and director of the foundation Futur 2. He is head of the Norbert Elias Center for Transformation Design at the University of Lenzburg, and he is author of numerous books on social political issues, particularly sustainability. So we hope that we have an interesting discussion, and you're all welcome and invited to join this discussion with these researchers. Okay, now after this, I want to first focus and go to the term humanistic transformation, and I want to look at challenges and narratives which are related to this. And I found in Berlin on the wall a picture which is this, like some graffiti, and I put this as a kind of image here in, because if we think of humanistic transformation, there are a lot of challenges, and I think it's really hard to summarize them, but just to give an overview how broad them is, I have here a list of 10, and this will be the only part I will read out quickly. A humanistic transformation refers to a process of societal change that prioritizes human well-being, values, and dignity. While such a transformation can bring numerous benefits, there are also several challenges that need to be addressed. Here are some common challenges associated with a humanistic transformation. First, resistance to change. Implementing a humanistic transformation often faces resistance from individuals and groups who are comfortable with the status quo. People may be reluctant to let go of familiar systems and structures, fearing uncertainty or loss of power. Second, socioeconomic inequality. Achieving a humanistic transformation requires addressing socioeconomic inequalities. Disparities in wealth, access to education, healthcare, and resources can hinder efforts to create a more equitable and inclusive society. Third, cultural and value differences. Different cultures and value systems may have varying notions of what constitutes human well-being and dignity. Finding common ground and reconciling diverse perspectives can be challenging during the transformation process. Fourth, institutional barriers. Existing institutional structures, laws, and policies may not align with humanistic values. Transforming these systems requires navigating bureaucratic hurdles, political resistance, and building consensus among stakeholders. Fifth, short-term versus long-term trade-offs. Balancing immediate needs and long-term goals can be a challenge. Some measures for humanistic transformation may involve short-term sacrifices or disruption, which can be difficult to justify in the face of immediate concerns. Sixth, changing mindsets and behaviors. A humanistic transformation often requires a shift in mindsets and behaviors at both the individual and societal levels. Seventh, sustainable resource management. Prioritizing human well-being while ensuring sustainable resource management is crucial. Striking a balance between meeting human needs and protecting the environment requires innovative solutions and a holistic approach to development. Eighth, measuring progress. Defining and measuring progress in a humanistic transformation can be complex. Traditional economic indicators may not fully capture well-being and happiness. Developing comprehensive metrics that consider social, environmental, and psychological factors is a challenge. Ninth, global cooperation. Achieving a humanistic transformation on a global scale requires international cooperation and coordination. Overcoming geopolitical conflicts, cultural differences, and divergent interests can pose significant challenges. And 10th, continuous adaptation. A humanistic transformation is an ongoing process that needs continuous adaptation to changing circumstances. Societies must be responsive to new challenges, emerging technologies, and evolving social dynamics to sustain progress. I don't know how you feel about it. When I read about it, it's a lot, and it shows how complex and how difficult, of course, this whole issue is to face. And I don't know if you agree with it, but it's a bit abstract, and maybe one can face it also from a different perspective. And so what is the challenge for humanistic transformation? First, overcoming imperialism. The US has historically exerted significant influence over other nations, often through economic, military, and cultural means. Challenging and transforming the hegemonic power requires addressing the underlying structures of imperialism and promoting self-determination for all nations. Second, countering economic equality. US-led neoliberal policies have contributed to global economic inequality, with multinational corporations and financial institutions wielding immense power. Third, cultural imperialism and homogenization. The dominance of US media, entertainment, and cultural exports has led to the homogenization of global cultures. Preserving and valuing diverse cultural identities and expressions is crucial for a humanistic transformation, challenging the imposition of American cultural norms and fostering cultural autonomy. And I will maybe skip some because it's a lot, but for example, 5, democratizing global governance. The US has played a central role in shaping global governance structures such as United Nations and international financial institutions, often to serve its own interest. And its followers, you see, this is a second narrative. It's a different narrative about human transformation. I don't know how you feel about it, if you agree, if you say one is right or one is wrong, but they have both one in common. I didn't write a single word. This is all generated by artificial intelligence. It's all generated by ChatGPT. So this is why I all read it. I did not invent it. And it's the same answer, but you can see I posed different questions, slightly different questions. The first question I posed was, what are challenges for humanistic transformation? This was the first slide I read to you. The second, how someone who is very critical about the hegemonic influence of the USA might summarize challenges for humanistic transformation. And then you can see it's a total different story, it's a total different narrative which is told. If we look a bit what is told, you can see, and I highlighted both are 10 points, you can see there are some topics are very similar in the way the artificial intelligence is answering. If you look at 3, for example, in the first answer, it's cultural and value differences. And the second answer is cultural imperialism and homogenization. Or we have the 8, measuring progress, reimagining international development. I think this is very interesting already also from a Frommian way, the one measuring and the other one going to imagination and imagine. And as I said, all from artificial intelligence. And 9, global cooperation and promoting human rights. I don't know how you feel about it. I mean, it was a bit repetitious, it was a bit as I read, but I mean, I think if I didn't say it was artificial intelligence, you would have bought this story from me as well, that this was kind of my research and bringing things together. And I think what can we learn and why I put it, I think it's very, very important not only to talk about ChatGPT or talk about artificial intelligence, but to see how the two answers are from the same source to a very similar question. They're also similar in formal structure, but content-wise, they're totally different. And so what I take out of it is, first, independent of this artificial intelligence generated. The way I addressed humanistic transformation, you can see it's definitely a question of political psychology, because the view you related to US imperialism or you related more to cultural values depends a lot on your standpoint. It depends a lot on how you see the world and how you think that the world is in power structures is organized. And there isn't an approach of humanistic transformation who's free of that. You have to have a kind of perspective, you have to kind of standpoint which you have to reflect. And then you can also see it's a high importance for our life, and it's highly important how we pose the questions. The way we pose the questions defines a lot the answers. And I think this is not only in artificial intelligence, this is generally the case. But often we do not have the questions. When we read media or when we read newspapers or something, we read it as a report, or we read it as a kind of objectification of sometimes. We do not know what questions have been posed or underlined. And I think this is very, very important. This is why I want to shift the focus to narratives. And I think human transformation for sure is a kind of narrative, and there's no escape. It is a narrative. And I think one important task for psychology is to develop a sensitivity for different narratives and to be very careful and very cautious, and this even more with artificial intelligence. And I want to give you briefly another example, as we are here in a university which has psychoanalysis in its name. It's called International Psychoanalytic University. We do not have only psychoanalysis, we have a lot of different approaches. We want to be a real university in integrating psychoanalysis, but there's a lot of discourse on psychoanalysis. And I played a bit with ChatGPT about what is a contemporary meaning on psychoanalysis, and I want to present you three narratives quickly. The first narrative, psychoanalysis developed by Sigmund Freud is a theoretical framework and therapeutic approach in psychology rather than a scientific method. While it has a significant historical impact on the field of psychology, its status as a scientific method is subject to debate and criticism. Psychoanalysis lacks some of the key characteristics of a scientific method. It is often criticized for its heavy reliance on subjective interpretations and lack of empirical evidence. The concepts and theories proposed by psychoanalysis are difficult to test objectively and measure reliably. In contemporary psychology, the emphasis has shifted toward empirical research, experimental designs, and the use of objective measures to study psychological phenomena. The scientific method in psychology typically involves formulating testable hypotheses, collecting data through systematic observations or experimentation, and analyzing the data using statistical methods. While psychoanalytic concepts have influenced the field and continue to be discussed and debated, contemporary psychology places greater emphasis on empirical research methods that can be replicated and validated. And we all wouldn't be here if this was our narrative, but it is an important narrative. The second narrative, and I will read only parts of it, you can read it, but psychoanalysis has played a crucial role in the history of psychology. It laid foundations for understanding the unconscious mind, the significance of early experience, and the complexity of human behavior. Despite its limitations as a scientific method, psychoanalysis continues to be influential in clinical practice. Many therapeutic approaches, including psychodynamic therapy, still draw upon psychoanalytic principles. Incorporating psychoanalysis into psychology education provides students with a broader understanding of therapeutic techniques and the theoretic underpinnings of various psychological interventions. Psychoanalysis offers a unique perspective on the complexities of human experience. And blah, blah, blah. It's important to note that the inclusion of psychoanalysis in research and teaching should not overshadow the emphasis on empirical research and scientific methods. Universities can strike a balance by integrating psychoanalytic theories and concepts as part of broader curriculum that encompasses multiple psychological approaches. And the third narrative, which I will read quickly, psychoanalysis offers a framework for exploring and interpreting the rich and complex inner world of individuals. It delves into unconscious processes, symbols, and narratives that shape our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Psychoanalysis recognizes the significance of context in shaping human behavior. It emphasizes the role of early experiences, family dynamics, and socio-cultural factors in influencing psychological development. Psychoanalysis highlights the role of unconscious processes in shaping thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. It recognizes the power of symbolism and the non-literal aspects of communication. By incorporating psychoanalysis, researchers can explore the hidden meanings, symbols, and unconscious motivations that shape human experience. And again, we have one source. It's the same program. It's ChatGPT. It's OpenAI. And I can generate 3 totally different answers on psychoanalysis. So we have 3 narratives. We have first narrative, psychoanalysis is not scientific, and it's, let's say, dead. The present overcame it. We don't need psychoanalysis. We can put it into the store of history, the shelf. The second is a bit ambivalent. It's a bit like contradictive. Psychoanalysis, yeah, somehow is good, somehow bad, so it should be a part of a balance. And somehow you can put it at universities, but not too much. And the third is psychoanalysis is crucial both to understand individual and social dynamics, so which is the total opposite of the first thing. And this all depends on the question you ask again. The first question, which I asked, is psychoanalysis a scientific method in psychology? The second, please explain in 4 to 5 paragraphs why psychoanalysis should become important in research and teaching at universities, especially in psychology and social psychology. And the last question, please explain why psychoanalysis should be considered as a part of scientific research and teaching from the perspective of someone who is open for hermeneutic and interpretative research. So what you can see again, 3 answers by the same source on a somehow similar question, content-wise totally opposite. Narratives are contradictory. And this could be funny, but generally, which question someone who uses AI or someone who goes to psychological textbooks, for example, asks, is the left question. And this is, I think, is a dangerous thing. When we talk about psychology, this is a hegemonic narrative. It's a narrative, yeah, we don't need psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis, yeah, we have Freud. This is last century, and we don't need it. So I think this is very dangerous. It's a dangerous narrative, and it's even more dangerous narrative by this apparent objectivity of an artificial intelligence like ChatGPT if we ask such a neutral question, because only with my knowledge about hermeneutics and interpretative research, and I know the strands who like psychoanalysis, I can generate this kind of third narrative, which is closer to my narrative. And I think this is something we really have to take into account, and I want to make a slight linkage to one heuristic differentiation I made in a book of mine, and I refer here to Jesse Sosa, who is also here in the present, who is a guest at our university for 1 year now, and to Boyke Rehbein, who was a very good colleague of us and unfortunately has passed away in the last year without any, it was a big shock, but I won't talk too much to it. And what I do here is like, in my habilitation, I distinguish 4 types of social inequalities and narratives. And I refer a lot to Jesse, who did the work on naturalized social inequality in Brazil. So I differentiate, I distinguish between social inequality, which is somehow naturalized, which is mystified, which is invisible, and which is somehow accepted. And this is very abstract. This is why I want to give you an example here for, if we talk about naturalized social inequality, for example, we have this meritocratic legitimization. We can find this very good in science, for example, when people apply for professorship, and there is apparently objective selection criteria, not in all universities, and many, but look how many articles in journals with impact factors. So it seems that there's a clear orientation, there's a clear meritocracy, and who has more achieved in better journals or something like this receives a better position. This is a kind of naturalizing a social inequality, because all this does not say anything about the quality of the publications or of the work which is done. Then we have, and this is also something which Chassé in his books works out very well, this kind of mystified social inequality. When we, for example, link to a kind of one state is more modern than the other, or is more pre-modern, but in sociology there's no modernization theory which is broadly accepted. So we link to kind of imaginaries of modern and modernization which have no scientific ground, but we use them and say, yeah, this pre-modern state, you know, it's like, and in our modern society, and the worse, it becomes an imaginary in these societies as well, a kind of neoliberal modernity which has shown a lot of negative impacts. And what I want to show out especially is this kind of invisible social inequality. And this is when we talk about science, for example. Psychoanalysis is made totally invisible. Qualitative research methods are made invisible. Fromm is made invisible. And these are strategies, implicit strategy to turn out some parts of psychology which are very important. And the last point, and I put the photo of my research assistant Katrin Vogt here, is a kind of accepted social inequality. And for example, we accept in our global world that someone who is 19 years old and grew up in Saudi Arabia or something inherits the patrimony of someone, and that someone who's 19 years old and grew up in Sudan does not have the chance. This is a kind of accepted social inequality which we have in our global society. And I think sometimes it's very important to distinguish and differentiate these kind of things. And related to psychology, I think it's very important to, and especially to psychoanalysis and to psychology focusing on humanistic transformation, to reveal these invisible social inequalities and to show all these invisible and to fight against it. And I think this is what I put here. I think it's not only important to develop a sensitivity to different narratives, but also for searching for, fighting for, and establishing counter-narratives. And then I come to Erich Fromm, and by the way, the next 4 slides I already showed in a kind of panel presentation which I gave in 2018, but I found them again. I think it's striking that they're even more relevant than 5 years ago now. So already in 1968, Erich Fromm published the work, The Revolution of Hope, Toward a Humanized Technology. And I have some quotes, what he says I think could be written 2 weeks ago, talking about ChatGPT or artificial intelligence. So a specter is stalking in our midst, whom only a few see with clarity. It is not the old ghost of communism or fascism, it's a new specter, a completely mechanized society devoted to maximal material output and consumption, directed by computers. And in its social process, man himself is being transformed into a part of the total machine, well-fed and entertained, yet passive, unalive, and with little feeling. Perhaps its most ominous aspect at present is that we seem to lose control over our own system. We execute the decisions which our computer calculations make for us. We as human beings have no aims except producing and consuming more and more. We will nothing, nor do we not will anything. We are threatened with extinction by nuclear weapons and artificial intelligence, and with inner deadness by the passiveness which our exclusion from responsible decision-making engenders. Are we confronted with a tragic, insolvable dilemma? Must we produce sick people in order to have a healthy economy, or can we use our material resources, our inventions, our computers to serve the ends of man? Must individuals be passive and dependent in order to have strong and well-functioning organizations? The last one. Given these general aims, what is the procedure of humanistic planning? Computers should become a functional part in life-oriented social system and not a cancer which begins to play havoc and eventually kills the system. Machines or computers must become means for ends which are determined by man's reason and will. The values which determine the selection of facts and which influence the programming of the computer must be gained on the basis of the knowledge of human nature. And this is where the humanism comes into play. Its various possible manifestations, its optimal forms of development, and the real needs conducive to this development. That is to say, man, not technique, must become the ultimate source of values, optimal human development, and not maximal production in the criterion for all planning. And I think this summarizes better than all these 10 points I had before what humanistic transformation should be about and what is the thing we should strive for. And this is a narrative we should strive for. This is why I showed it before. I think we have to make this clear, and we have, as psychologists, we have to go into the debates and we have to show it's not only about IT, it's not about neuroscience, it's not about organizational administration, it's psychology which is really required here and which has to go into dialogue with society, with politicians. And this was very clear in a talk, which I don't know if there's an English version. I translated it. It was a German lecture of the Erich Fromm Prize, which once a year is awarded to a selected person. And this year, this was Professor Thomas Fuchs. And in his talk, he debates something which Hartmut Rosa referred yesterday as well to, like the humanistic narrative is challenged by 2 new narratives, the trans-humanistic narrative and the post-humanistic narrative. And I'm sure in the conference we have more time to go deep into this, but I want to read 2 quotes of Thomas Fuchs, which I translated into English, so please apologize any English mistake in it. After only a few centuries of reshaping the earth, humans proudly lend their name to an entire geological era, that of the Anthropocene. They attribute to themselves the godlike power, artificial intelligence, artificial life, or even consciousness. They begin to take their own biological optimization into their own hands in order to finally transform themselves into superhuman beings, as propagated by transhumanism, and in the end, possibly to achieve immortality. So the narrative, which we have here on transformation, is like human will be transformed into transhuman, the dependence of body, the mortality, the natality, which Hartmut Rosa yesterday told, will be extended to have like godlike power to be with eternal life. But we also have the post-humanistic narrative. On the other hand, however, there is a deep pessimism. Apocalyptic statements are piling up according to which it would be best for the earth if it could free itself from its mold coating, as Schopenhauer once dubbed mankind. Schimmel. Homo sapiens has abused its supremacy and therefore only deserves to perish through a collapse of the ecosystem, or to make way for a post-human superior intelligence. This was what Hartmut Rosa yesterday in the beginning stated, like, wow, we have war, we go back into this all kind of things, why we should survive as human beings. I'm not sure if we deserve it. And if even Hartmut Rosa, I mean, he joked about it, but even if someone like this has this kind of fantasies, for me it shows how important this conference is and how important it is to strive for another narrative of humanism and not show, oh, this is old-fashioned, this is nothing which is worth anymore. And I will keep this short, but interesting, if you ask the right questions, again, ChatGPT gives you the answers. What is needed in psychology? So, philosophical debates. The question was how the development of AI in the next years may influence the self-understanding of human beings and their concepts of soul and consciousness. And so it says, yeah, the philosophical debate. There might be discussions on the nature of consciousness, self-awareness, and the mind-body problem, ethical problems, maybe reflections on what means to be human and the unique qualities that differentiates human from machines. Then redefining human capabilities. It may lead to a re-evaluation of how we perceive our abilities. It has impact on personal identity. We reflect on the nature of interpersonal relationships and the role of consciousness and emotion in defining our own identities. And fifth, this was, I didn't edit it. It was like, it's one-to-one, what was the answer? Fifth, spiritual and religious perspectives. We need spiritual reflections on the nature of soul and consciousness. And it is important to note that these potential influences are speculative and subject to individual interpretations and cultural contexts. The impact of AI on the concepts of soul and consciousness will likely be complex and multifaceted, and it will require ongoing interdisciplinary discussions and reflections to fully understand its implications. So this is exactly what we're doing here on this conference. So I promise this was the last AI I added. I do research on my own, so I'm not only dependent on ChatGPT. But it's interesting. And I want to go a bit into psychological perspectives. So this is something I looked up yesterday, the current state of social psychology. We learned what we should do, and now we see what is going on. This is one of, I searched for what are the journals with the most impact. It's not a journal I read generally, but I found this Personality and Social Psychological Review with an impact factor of 16 and a 5-year impact factor of over 20. This is huge. If someone who knows impact factors, this is really big shot. And so look, what are recent articles of social psychology which are discussed? And I do not want to talk bad about colleagues or anything. So all these articles probably are very well methodologically founded and grounded and within their community very well seen. But if we look where we are standing, what we need for a kind of psychology, what do we find? So I have some examples, but I want to read you the example of one. It's value fulfillment from a cybernetic perspective, a new psychological theory of well-being. Sounds good. Title is nice. New is always nice. You find something, it's good for a journal. And if we look at the abstract, value fulfillment theory, VFT, is a philosophical theory of well-being. Cybernetic Big Five theory, CB5T, is a psychological theory of personality. Both start with a conception of the person as a goal-seeking or value-pursuing organism, and both take goals and the psychological integrations of goal to be key to well-being. by joining VFT and CB5T, we produce a cybernetic value fulfillment theory in which we argue, and now I underline this, that well-being to best conceived as a fulfillment of psychologically integrated values. Well-being is the effective pursuit of a set of non-conflicting values that are emotionally, motivationally, and cognitively suitable to the person. The primary difference in our theory from other psychological theories of well-being is that it does not provide a lot of intrinsic good, instead emphasizing that each person may have their own list of intrinsic goods. We discuss the implications of our theory for measuring, researching, and improving well-being. So, great, you know, I mean, what do we learn? Like, we do not know anything about well-being, but we learn a bit, yeah, well-being is different for anybody, and there are different values and non-conflictual. And if I read this, and if I compare this to what Erich Fromm wrote 55 years ago, I mean, what a huge difference. Then it's really something which, so I think we really have to fight against this. This is like, why do we link to all these kind of criteria? And why do we accept that this is a criteria in science which defines of success in many institutions? This is not fair. This is something we have to really do. And this is the next thing, like what Thomas Kühn said, it's time for a scientific revolution. The answers you get depend on the questions you ask. This is what I said. So I'm repeating myself. Artificial intelligence made an avatar of me so far, and I incorporated the spirit. So this, of course, is not me, but it always gives me good opportunities if I travel, for example, to countries where the Ü is translated into Kühn. So this is a famous philosopher, and Thomas Kühn. And yeah, probably because of the name, I started to read a bit about paradigm shift. And I think we really need this kind of thing. Okay, this was a bit of a joke, but still something serious. And so I think what we really need is a need for humanistic human psychology. We need to get psychology back on key questions. We live in a world where we know a lot, but there's also a lot we do not know about human beings. So what is a soul, for example? What happens after death, for example? These are questions, and these are questions psychology should somehow deal with. It's not easy to operationalize and to measure it and kind of things. But if we only link it to what is clearly measurable, we do not address key questions. And so who has interest, I have some examples to this, and I will skip a lot. I think we need an interdisciplinary approach. There's one article I wrote with Sebastian Bohmet, linking environmental psychology and critical social psychology. I think it's very important to go into biographical research, because this is also something which differentiates us from artificial intelligence. Hartmut Rosa yesterday talked about natality, but it's also like we have biographies, and biographies shape our way we see the world. And this is strongly linked to Erich Fromm and to the keynote which Rainer Funk will give during this conference about social character, because social character is something which we achieve and which we develop by being in special cultural contexts, by being embedded in special socialization context. And I think this is very important to have this psychodynamic concept. In sociology we have habitus, and I think it's a very good way to link maybe habitus to social character and research, but we need also this psychodynamic understanding of character structures. One last thing I might, so I have a lot of Erich Fromm here, which I could also on human dichotomy from Thomas Fuchs again, but I will shift you because I want to go in my research project to show you one thing I am doing, which I think is very important. This is the last I want to do. It's kind of identity work. I think what we are doing and what we as human beings have to do is a kind of construct our identity every time newly in our life. And I developed a heuristic approach based on theories of Heiner Kolb and Hartmut Rosa, who were here yesterday, and linking it nowadays to social character and to Erich Fromm as well, which I call the normative ABC of identity work, which is something which society imposes us to do as well. So on the one hand, it's like we have to strive for a feeling of authenticity or coherence. If I wasn't Thomas Kühn here and I would go here today and say, oh, look, today I'm Phil Langer or today I'm Herr Olberts or something like this, you would say, yeah, this person is a bit bala bala. So I like to have some parts of both of you, of course, and I will never be able to copy, but I'm still a bit happy to have my own personal identity. And this is something which society imposes on me as well. I cannot be like Rainer Funk or something. I have to develop somehow a feeling of personal identity. And also I have to belong to certain groups. I have to find, Hartmut Rosa talked yesterday on your question on recognition, for example, so I have to feel somehow I'm part of the IPU. I'm male or maybe not, I'm diverse or something, I am German or not, I'm cosmopolitan, and all these things I think I have to do. And if I hadn't control, if I would take this and would throw you, or if I could go to Phil and make pop, pop, pop with him, and I would lose control over my own actions, I wouldn't be here. It would be my last lecture, and I probably would go into a kind of closed psychiatry. But I do so. Also, society imposes us to have a kind of feeling of efficacy and control. And I think this is a very important and good heuristic way to see biographical actions and to see how persons construct identities. And a last chart, if you allow me to see how I link this with Erich Fromm. We currently do a research with startups and with leaders of startups. And this is a teaser also for the talk of Rainer Funk, who will talk on the ego orientation, which is a kind of social character which doesn't see any borders anymore, which links a lot to technical progress, to artificial things, and we call in German Entgrenzung, like creating everything, not linking to one's own inner originality and creativity and power, but needing technical help and kind of things. And this, when Phil talked about transformative leadership, is a very dominant narrative which we have currently when we talk about leaders, and like no hierarchies anymore. It's also kind of loss of borders. We are all friends together. Also, when I'm in a responsible post, I'm more a coach than a leader or something like this. I belong to others. We can go out together. So also this kind of clear borders and authorities lose. And there's nothing, I don't say this is all bad. I'm not opposing new work structures also totally. But I see also some dangers, and this is what we do in these interviews, where we can find, for example, in the ego-orientated social marketing character, the strive for authenticity is strongly linked to experience oneself as friendly, fair, cooperative, appreciative, and motivated. But what is rather repressed are negative feelings. Those people have strong problems to discuss in conflicts in their companies, for example, to say, I don't like you or something, or I don't want this, I hate it. It's this norm of positivity which is in this, and which is very toxic in a way. In belonging, the strong need to feel connected without being bound. Connections are strongly linked to norms of functional cooperation, shared friendliness. Those large networks, we are all friends, and we have all we recognize each other, and we talk to each other as if we knew each other since 10 years. But it's really hard to discuss open conflicts. And so the density and the intensity of these relations in this leadership is very difficult. And it depends strongly on measures and concrete facts about control. So if I have control, for example, measures would tell me I have to stop. But I say, no, this is important, and I feel I want to say it. So I don't define to measure. But if I was only oriented to measure, and I have these digital tools and kind of things, and this takes over the control, this is also a problem, because then it's the same as in science. And I think I'm coming back to my point. If science, for example, has no quality criteria, and if we don't compete in a productive way, which is better, what should be done, what are needs for the society, and just look at impact factors and just look at objective, quantifiable, the real important things get out of mind. And this, I will finish here and just leave some quotes. There's an urge for a revolution of hope, which we have, and these are some quotes from Erich Fromm. Thank you very much for your attention, and Phil, I give to you for maybe a short discussion.